Now that we've done adding mixed numbers, we're going to move on to subtracting mixed numbers. So we're going to do a couple here together. Again, just like adding, we're going to subtract our whole numbers first, and then I'm going to subtract my fraction second. So 4 minus 2 is 2, and 2/3 minus 1/3 is 1/3. So 4 2/3 minus 2 1/3 is equal to 2 1/3. This next one, we've got 7 1/8 minus 2 3/8. On this one, we're going to have to use that borrowing technique that we just talked about a little earlier. Because 7 minus 2 we can do, but 1/8 minus 3/8 we can't. So we actually have to take a whole number away from 7. So 1 less than 7 is 6. And to our fraction 1/8, we're going to add 8/8 because 8/8 is 1 whole. And so here we've got 6 9/8 minus 2 3/8. 6 9/8 is just another way to write 7 1/8 so that we can do the subtraction like we need to. 6 minus 2 is 4. 9/8 minus 3/8 is 6/8. And so I've got 4 6/8. My last step is always to make sure that my fraction is in simplest form or is reduced. And in this case, 6 and 8 can both be divided by 2. And so I'm going to do that, and I get 4 3/4 as my final answer. So 7 1/8 minus 2 3/8 is 4 3/4. Whenever we're doing this adding and subtracting of fractions, remember that we can double check our answer to see if it makes sense. This is about 7 minus about 2. 7 minus 2 is 5. 4 3/4 is about 5, so that seems reasonable and makes sense in our answer here. On this next one, we've got some negatives, and we know that the rule for subtracting numbers is copy, change, change. So I'm going to copy negative 3 2/3. I'm going to change subtraction to addition, and I'm going to change positive 2 to negative 2 3/4. Now, when we add fractions, just like when we subtract, we have to have common denominators. So 3 and 4 both have a common multiple of 12. They both go into 12, and so I'm going to do 3 times 4 to get to 12, and I've got negative 3 8/12 here, plus negative 2, and I'm going to do 4 times 3, and 3 times 3 to get a denominator of 12 here, and 3 times 3 is 9. So I've got negative 3 8/12 plus negative 2 9/12. I'm going to add my whole numbers, 3 and 2, which is 5. They're both negative, so I keep my sign. And 8/12 plus 9/12 is 17/12. Now here's where I have an improper fraction, and I need to make it into a whole number, or be part of my mixed number. And so I know that 12 goes into 17 one time, so I'm going to add 1 to 5, so I get negative 6. And then 17 minus 12 leaves me with 5 left over. Negative 6 5/12 is my final answer here. On the last example that we're going to do here in our notes, I've got negative 3 5/8 minus negative 2 1/8. I know that the 3 C's tell me to copy, change, change. And when I do that, I have plus a positive. So I have a negative plus a positive, and signs are different. So I have to subtract and keep the sign of the higher number. In this case, 3 is bigger than 2, so I'm going to do 3 minus 2, which is 1. And 5/8 minus 1/8 is 4/8. Keep the sign of the higher number, which is negative, and so I've got negative 1 4/8. The last step here is to reduce my fraction, because 4/8 can be simplified. 4 goes into both 4 and 8, so if I divide the numerator and denominator by 4, I get my final answer to be negative 1 1/2 as my answer. So negative 3 5/8 minus negative 2 1/8 is equal to negative 1 1/2. At this point in time, I would challenge you to try the next two on your own and then watch the next video to see if you get them correct.